All righty, time to go take a look at France. What's happening in France? Usually insanity. Why? It's France. All righty, right after the end of the 30 Years' War in 1648, France has been, involved in that war, and we have a new king showing up. Now, Louis XIV, I don't know what's up here with the pantyhose, but anyway, that's what they like to do in France. He decides when he becomes king, he's going to have a centralized monarchy. There's no such thing as a parliament in France. Okay, there's the Estates General they call in about every 30 years or so, and that's about it. He's got some of his pet nobles, and then some nobles don't like him because, well, when he came to the throne, he was basically just a kid. And that caused a few problems because he's not old enough to be a king. And you know what happens? The cat's away, the mice will play, right? So he actually was eligible for the throne in 1642, but he was like 5 years old at the time. So Cardinal Richelieu kind of ran the country for him. And you know how people are with absolute power, they don't want to let go. He eventually dies, and then we had Cardinal Mazarin for a while, same sort of guy. And then the nobles had a revolt. They call it the Fronde. Sometimes you see an E, sometimes you don't. 1648 to 1652. Well, they eventually put that down, and he had to get moved around from place to place because they probably want to kill the young king and become kings themselves. But that never happened, and eventually he moved Mazarin out of the way and became king on his own in 1661. So that's why he centralizes the monarchy. He's a bit of a control freak because look at how he grew up. So nobody is going to tell him what to do. It's his country. He's going to run it the way he wants to run it. And you don't like it, well, you know what? We haven't invented the guillotine yet, but we can still chop your head off with an axe. So Louis XIV, he is the Sun King. He builds this huge palace at Versailles, and he is in charge. He is the state. That's what he says. I am the state. So the whole French government is run by Louis XIV. Like I said, bit of a control freak. So they got a few bucks. They've made some money off of, the 30 Years' War. The nobles they killed, they took their money. And what do these guys always do with their money? Yeah, they fight everybody. We just came out of the 30 Years' War. We just came out of the Fronde. So let's attack the entire planet. War after war after war after war. The war of devolution. Let's attack the Netherlands. Kind of hard to do that because the first thing they do is they open up the dikes and flood everything. He gets a little bit of territory. Doesn't look all that impressive, does it? That's why in 1672 he attacks the Dutch again. They call this the Dutch War. It goes on 6 years, don't really get a whole lot there, do they? Got the 9 Years' War, from 1688 to 1697. Basically, he tries to invade Germany, and, that doesn't go over too well because, well, he starts fighting everybody. Germany, Spain, I mean, not Spain, Germany, some of the Italian groups come in here, England, goes on for a long time, doesn't gain a whole lot. And then comes the War of Spanish Succession. This is the big one. Spanish Habsburgs, Austrian Habsburg, guy named Charles II looks vaguely like a lizard. He dies, doesn't have a son. They're going to truck in some Austrian there to help him out. And instead, he wills his entire kingdom to Philip of Anjou, who is related to, Louis the 14th. And all of England, all of Europe freaks out, especially England, because they don't want to see France and Spain united. Because if they're united, that means all that money from the New World comes flooding into France. And you kind of see what France has been up to lately, especially under Louis the 16th. So here we are, 13-year war. At the end of the war, they put Philip on the throne on the condition that France and Spain never unite. But France and Spain are going to be allies for a long time. Meanwhile, France is broke. Yeah, this happens when you fight all these wars. See, they didn't listen to history, they didn't read their history books. Spain got all this money, fought everybody, went broke. France didn't have a lot of money, they had a few bucks, and they still blew it on all these wars. Louis XIV dies, 1714. What about all that debt France has? That's going to come back to bite him. So he dumps off on his son, Louis XV, who dumps it off on his son, Louis XVI. French monarchs in this century, easy to figure out. Louis XIV, XV, XVI, if you ever got to memorize them. Well, You know what's going to happen to Louis XVI, right? If you don't know, hang around. You'll find out soon enough, a couple chapters down the road. So France is broke, but they're still going to be aggressive. I don't know. It's like those guys who lose at gambling. They go broke, and it just seems to spur them on. I don't know where to get the money from. They keep making these bad bets to keep losing. That's France. I don't know why. Now, from France, let's bounce to the other side of Europe real fast. Peter the Great of Russia comes to the throne officially in 1682, again as a child. He's around for a while, and he decides he wants to modernize Russia. And the best way to modernize Russia is to build a navy. Now, Russia is basically broke. They never had any money to start with. They got some money coming in from furs in Siberia, but they need to build a navy. Navies cost a lot of money. You can pay to have people build it, but like I said, they're broke. So Peter the Great works in the shipyards in Rotterdam in England. They don't even know who this guy is. He's over there working with his hands, building ships and figuring out how to do it himself. He went to England and they finally figured out who he was, and they had a huge party with a lot of booze, and they destroyed a couple buildings actually. So, after a while they figure out Peter the Great is, and they start working with the guy. He wants to modernize Russia, and of course, he's got to fight against people who don't want to change anything. He says, hey, news flash, it's not 1480 anymore. The Mongols have been gone a long time. So, he wants the nobles to shave their beard and dress as Europeans, don't look like Mongols. They don't like it, so he forces them to shave. They called it a beard tax, and a couple guys showed up with beards and said they weren't going to pay the tax or shave, so he shaved them in court with a knife. He's a big guy, man. We're talking 6'5" and 230 right here, Ben Roethlisberger looking kind of guy. He also thought he knew dentistry, and he always had a pair of pliers with him. So if anybody ever said he had a toothache, guess who's coming straight for you with a pair of pliers? No anesthetic. You're lucky. That was Russia. You might have some vodka around, but yeah. Just keep away from this guy. Just do what he tells you to do. Peter the Great, a lot of enthusiasm. We rebuilt the Russian army, enlisted himself as a private, and told the drill instructor, do not promote me unless I master this skill. And you know what basic training like in Russia, even today? Yeah, he got hit in the side of the head because they told him to do it if he didn't do things right. And of course, that drill sergeant like, could I have those instructions in writing, please? Just in case. Don't say anything about toothaches, drill sergeant, okay? Just quick word of warning. Now, here's Russia. First thing you know is it's big, and I got news for you, buddy. It's going all the way to the Pacific. Russia's problem is they need a window to the world. They need a port. That's why they need a navy. And Sweden's in the way right here, and they got the Turks in the way. You say, what about this thing? This is Murmansk. Tends to get frozen over a lot. Kind of hard to get out of there. Well, if I can get a European port, close to Europe, even one on the Mediterranean, hey, Russia could trade with the world. In the 1690s, they fight the Turks a lot down here in the Sea of Azov, trying to get the Crimea, still in the news, right? Hey, look, there's the Holy Roman Empire, still chaos. They fight with the Turks, they gain it, they lose it, they get it back. All right, but even if they got into the Black Sea, I still can't get out of here. So still not that easy. And then they get the war with Sweden in 1700 all the way to 1721, the Great Northern War. They're trying to take this, and they will get it eventually. Problem is, hard to sail out of here, right? Charles XII of Sweden fights with the Russians and actually get down to a place called Poltava in 1709 and lose. And that kind of war kind of goes downhill on them from there. But the Russians just can't get organized to put the killing blow on Sweden. But they do manage to get the Baltic, and hey, they got a port over here. It's still kind of trapped in, but you got to start somewhere, and the same thing down here. Here's Poland in the way. Yep, Poland, Russia, you know what's coming here, right? So, 1725, Peter's going to die. His son Alexei, who was supposed to succeed him, was convicted of trying to overthrow him, so they threw him in prison while he decided what to do, and his son died on him. So you have to get his wife Catherine, and it's going to start a century where the 1700s, where Russian czars are actually female, and Russia does pretty well. We'll get to that later on. Enjoy the rest of your day. I am too. Have a great day.